today we are joined by a very special guest, Samantha Dixon. She's a 29-year-old creative entrepreneur and late diagnosed AuDHD woman who is passionate about building a life and business that works with her brain, not against it. With a BS in psychology and an MS in psychology with a focus in applied behavior analysis, Samantha brings both lived experience and academic insight to conversations about neurodivergence, self-understanding, and redefining success on her own terms. Welcome to Black Girl Diagnosed, Samantha.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on talking with you and discussing the topics that we have.
Yes, yes, me too. So let's get right into things. Many Black women are diagnosed later in life because of masking. Can you talk a little bit about what masking looked like for you and how that affected your journey to getting diagnosed?
Yes, definitely. Masking, I think, is one of the biggest parts of my journey. I think it's still something that I'm unraveling myself. I think as women, and especially as Black women, I think that we become master maskers. I think
Mm-hmm.
in order to sort of survive, it's just something that we are conditioned to do and something that even like we ourselves feel like is a natural thing, but it's really not. So I'll say some of the ways that I've noticed that I mask is definitely in engaging, engaging in social activities and engaging
Yeah.
in social events. It's something that, I do have ADHD and autism, so I do notice that the two conflict a little bit when it comes to, social outings, but I would say, speaking when I feel like I have to speak or, making facial expressions that I feel like I have to make. And it's more so to make other people feel comfortable and make sure that I'm not, confusing other people. But it's something that I have tried to, do a little bit less when I can, when I feel safe to, especially at home or especially, around friends who I feel comfortable doing so. I think even masking things such as like pain or discomfort is something that I've also dealt with chronic illness. And yeah, I just think masking is really ingrained in us from a very young age, and it shows up in a lot of different aspects in our lives and relationships, whether it's platonic or, a partner relationship, special or a significant other. Also masking in the workplace, I think that was a really big thing for me. That was it really pinpointed. I think my autism was often burning out from jobs
Hmm.
and having to mask through that burnout. When it's just double work, double the work. So yes, I definitely am still figuring out how to unmask, what that looks like for me, and how I can do so in a way that does make is accommodating to me and my autism diagnosis, but also is not completely disruptive to others. I'm trying to find that balance, and I don't know
Yeah.
if you have, any thoughts on that, but
Yeah, well, I totally understand. I'm also chronically ill. I have 5 autoimmune diseases, so I definitely understand where you're coming from. And with the masking, also, in Black culture, we're held by other races to certain standards because they throw us into stereotypes. So trust me, I understand. And you mentioned that you also have ADHD, which me too. I don't really ever talk about it, but how someone who is ADHD, what does it feel like when your autism and ADHD traits seem to conflict with each other?
It genuinely feels like I'm a walking contradiction,
Oh, wow.
which is it's twofold. I am always trying to find the positive in it, but I definitely am always feeling contradictory to myself, and I also will clock that in like others, feeling like I'm contradicting myself. I'll say, and again, in the social aspect, I think my ADHD really likes to make friends and be social and like have a good conversation. If I don't know if I might hear somebody talking about something I'm interested in, or they do say something that intrigues me. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll converse in this. And then partway through the conversation, I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore. And there's nothing wrong with the person. It's just I suddenly feel perceived. I suddenly feel like I just start, I guess, that's when I start masking a little bit too much,
Yeah.
or I start feeling the need to mask. I think also my ADHD and autism conflict when it comes to I guess my focus. Since I do work from home, especially, I think that's like the biggest wake-up call for me was I intuitively started working from home, but it also allowed my traits to come out more. I guess maybe unmasking is part of it,
Yeah.
but in my focus. So I would say I'm definitely able to kind of like get into that hyper-focused zone, and I really am able to dive into the things that I'm very interested in. However, I'm also very kind of spacey and in my own head. So I kind of jump in between the two. So I never know what it's going to really be each day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like for me, I know more about autism than I do ADHD, but I know when I start feeling a little weird, I'm like, okay, well, this isn't my autism, so this is my ADHD. So like it can be really exhausting because, you're trying to keep yourself together, but at the same time, your brain is fighting itself. So I understand that. And speaking of working from home, you're building a business that works with your brain instead of against it. What changes or strategies have helped you create a work life that supports your neurodivergence?
Sure, that's a really good question. Like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, it was something, working from home is something I kind of did intuitively. It was when I was really struggling with, I struggled with Crohn's disease. I'm in remission now, thankfully, but for 14 years, it was definitely a struggle. It
Oh,
was,
yeah.
going through constant burnout and pushing through any symptoms, any pain that I was feeling. So I was constantly masking through that, and started working from home because showing up for work. I love to work and I love to do a good job at things and I love being told I'm doing a good job. However, when you cannot show up consistently in the same way as you're supposed to, I think that really, the guilt hangs over you, the anxiety and the rumination. So I started working from home, and since receiving my diagnosis since working from home, I will say that even giving myself more flexibility. I think when you're an entrepreneur and you offer freelance services, you try to work as much as you can to support yourself as much as you can, make as much money as you can, because that we know that that cushion is needed at times. However, I think, consistently being hard on myself for not being able to get as many things done on my to-do list was not helping me. Or, pushing through when I'm really tired. It's like that really can wait till tomorrow. So I think showing myself the flexibility and the grace to take extra time to rest, realizing that rest is productive, working through everything is really not as productive as we think it is. I think when you are autistic and even ADHD, we are constantly feeling like we need to catch up, like we're behind. And I think that that also, like the constant catching up, also puts us behind. So I think, showing myself grace, that flexibility, and really taking on projects and clients and offering services that I'm really excited about. And like it genuinely fills me up. I'm passionate about it. And I think also, working as an entrepreneur and offering freelance skills, you can offer so many different skills. So I don't feel stuck. And I think that's where my ADHD and my autism also conflict is I love doing like the same, but then I love like being able to switch it up every now and then. So like every couple of weeks or every quarter, I might, really be diving into UGC. I do user generated content and create video content. Sometimes I really don't want to be in front of the camera that much. And so I start offering more strategy services and things that I can do behind the scenes. And so that's why I also post online is to show others that they can do the same. It's really endless possibilities out there.
For like autistic people and people with ADHD, because they feel like burnout is the same for us as it is for neurotypical people. So I don't think they understand like how serious burnout is for us. Like I had it like all last week. I kind of like I posted on social media a few times, but they were just reposts of stuff I had posted already because like I just felt like I needed a break. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt like everything I do, I was like rushing. And so I was just like, okay, I'm gonna take a week off. I'm not gonna do anything. I didn't record any podcasts. I didn't do anything, but I really needed that rest because I just felt like I was losing my mind. And I think
Yeah.
that people like I love to see people who are, so passionate, but sometimes you do have to step back and give yourself a little bit of grace and let yourself know it's okay to rest. It's okay to take care of yourself. But so let's talk about mental health a little bit. Mental health stigma is very real in the Black community. I have anxiety and depression and a dissociative disorder. So, I've ran into a lot of that stigma. So what conversations do you think we need to be having to break that stigma?
That's a really, really good question. I think there's a lot of conversations that can be had, but I definitely think believing each other when we say that we're struggling. I think I think the Black community holds each other to a very high standard. I think that we're still trying to show grace and I think that we're still trying to have these conversations, but I think that I see it happening so much more in other communities when I think that we could support each other so much easier than we do. I think it's starting within our families and having different conversations. I think that setting boundaries, there's people in my life who I have had to cut off because they didn't believe me, and it was sort of a thing where we have to pick and choose our battles. Not every battle is worth fighting. However, I do think
Absolutely.
voicing your concerns and voicing how you're feeling is very, very important. I think if somebody knows, somebody's going to catch on, and either, not that it's anybody's job to help, but I think to just hear you out. Um, and I think also us, those who feel comfortable doing so, speaking about our experiences online. That's why I felt so drawn to, because I did see other Black women, very few other Black women with AuDHD and autism, who were speaking about it online and were being so candid. And I really appreciated that, because I do think we are so hard on ourselves. I think parents have been very hard on us. I think it's a generational thing. And again, maybe that was a survival tactic back then, but I just think as we progress and evolve in society, and as a culture, I do think that we need to not be as hard on ourselves and not be as hard on each other, showing each other that grace. So yes, like have these high expectations, high standards for ourselves, but also realize that mental health is not exclusive to any one race or community. And we of all communities would be dealing with the most mental health issues. So I think it's a little counterintuitive to think that we don't. Um,
Yeah.
I think we've hide it really well because we've had to. Everyone
Yeah,
around us
yeah,
has been telling us to hide it.
exactly.
So I mean, what else? Yeah, I think if
And
we talk about it more and discuss it more,
what
hopefully
you
that'll
said
help.
about boundaries is so important. Like I actually like, and I
Yeah.
cut this, it was like a family friend off years ago because,
Mhm.
I was going through a bout of depression
Mhm.
and they were like, oh, you're being so negative. You're bringing negative energy around. You can't bring that negative energy to my house. And I'm just like, well, I'm depressed. Like
Ah.
I'm not being negative. I'm trying to, speak about the mental health issues that I got going on. And then you have other people who are like, well, what do you have to be depressed about? Not really knowing everything that you're going through, but they shouldn't feel entitled to know what you're going through just to offer support.
Or to even understand it. They do not have to have experienced it or understand it themselves to offer support or
Yes.
empathy, sympathy, anything like that. And agreed with it. I'm a boundary queen now. I think
Oh, me
I've
too.
always kind of told other people, it's like you got to set these parents first thing. We got to set boundaries with their parents.
Yeah, I had
I know
to. I
that's a
had to
hard
start
one,
I had
but
to
we
start
have
setting
to.
boundaries with people. And it was kind of hard because I did lose some people when I started setting boundaries. It did hurt, but I knew that I had to do it for my well-being and for my mental health and for my physical health. So, I think sometimes we are a little bit hard on ourselves. Like, sometimes I would set a boundary and then I'd be like, wow, well, was I a little bit too hard on them? But no, you set the boundaries that are comfortable and that are best for you and best for your mental health.
Agreed. And I think anybody who gets upset at you setting those boundaries there's like a saying, it's like they're upset because they no longer can, overstep that line.
Yeah.
So,
When I tried to set a boundary with someone because, I just felt a little bit smothered and I told them I was like, I'm taking a little break from text messaging and they were like, even me. And in my mind, I'm like, especially you. But, I didn't say that I was just, yeah, I eventually had to block them.
hmm And I'm
Just,
proud of you for doing that. It is hard to set the boundaries. And I think
it
also
is.
that's part of like, I don't know if that's masking. I don't know what sort of conditioning that is in us, but it's also again, like not trying to make another person feel uncomfortable or upset. We're not trying to hurt feelings, but it's also like stress is, I think that's a really big factor in my life. So I try to negate the stress as much as possible. Life is stressful enough. So I think, setting those boundaries and having people around us who support. And I'm also even being more mindful about having more neurodivergent friends in my life. I think we automatically kind of attract each other, but I'm also noticing have been, friendships and relationships in my life that were not conducive to who I am. I am autistic. I am ADHD. So it's like I'm now realizing, what friendships, relationships, even job opportunities are not aligned with me and my
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So, you share your content about your late diagnosis journey. I've been there. I'm a millennial, so I,
I'm a young millennial, so
oh, okay. I people didn't know about autism when we were little girls.
Mm-mm.
So I've definitely been there sharing my journey about, my late diagnosis journey. What inspired you to be open about your experience and what kind of impact have you seen from sharing your story?
That's a really good question. I was really inspired by all the women that I saw sharing their stories online. And it wasn't even necessarily like, oh, they're doing that, I want to do that. It genuinely, I came across the content and it helped me realize that I was ADHD. And then through treating my ADHD and still being on that side of TikTok, I started getting on autistic talk. And I was like, oh, okay, got it.
Now that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I'm like, that's like a canon event, isn't it? But I think that relating to them so much and just seeing how almost empowered they were, watching some who had started posting from like the beginning of their journey, whether they had just received their late diagnosis or they were seeking a late diagnosis, and just seeing almost like the growth and empowerment of them speaking about it. And I did work also heavily with autistic kiddos. I did ABA. I worked in ABA. So I thought that was really interesting that I was like, okay, that's maybe why I related to the kids so well. Um, and it kind of was like a full circle. It was more so, it was like me being interested in learning more about autism and ADHD and being like diagnosed in women. And also me realizing how pivotal that was for me to come across that content and me wanting to help continue that, I guess, if that makes sense. I was already posting about my life and like chronic illness and, you know, having a life. So I think it was just kind of a natural progression. And in sharing what I have so far, and it hasn't been a ton, I have like slowly kind of, I guess, incorporated it into my own content just because I think maybe a lot of us struggle with this, but the imposter syndrome of not having a diagnosis yet, I didn't want to impose on saying I had a diagnosis when there's a whole community that already did. But since sharing, I've had so many people reach out and like genuinely have said that they've been struggling and they just really thought something was wrong with them, but that there were no answers, and they've ended up receiving an ADHD and or autism diagnosis since seeing my content. So it's not that I'm trying to diagnose anybody, but it's just I would have never known if I didn't. I don't think I would have known if I didn't come across the content. It would have probably taken me 5, 10 more years to find out with just, the way things are. And I think just making the information accessible to others where they can kind of start thinking about things and showing themselves that grace and noticing, what's out of alignment in their own lives and causing, extra stress or, am I going through constant burnout cycles? Am I sick because I'm, expending too much energy doing this or not recovering enough? So yeah, I'm just trying to be helpful, I guess. It was just like always one thing I wanted to do was help people. And so I think like teaching people how to make money online in different ways and also showing people that like women have autism too and Black women have
Yeah.
autism and ADHD. I don't know, it's been really cool and I think it's been helpful so far.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like me myself, I wasn't seeking an autism diagnosis. I was actually diagnosed as, being having bipolar, being bipolar. I'm not sure what people prefer who are, but and it kind of like, I wouldn't say I had a nervous breakdown, but everybody was like, what is wrong with her? So I got my diagnosis by accident. I just happened to be
Yeah.
put in a psychiatric hospital. And after a couple months, they were like, we're going to give her a like full evaluation. And in that evaluation, which took a couple of days, they just found out that I was autistic and have ADHD and dyslexia and a whole bunch of shit. But like, um, when I learned, I didn't say anything to anybody for a long time. And then finally in 2020, during the pandemic, I started to share my story. And for some reason, people were like really like accepting of it, or other people were like, I started following you because my daughter is autistic and
Yeah.
you helped me understand her. So, like it all, like with me and my platform, it all kind of happened by accident. I was just sharing my lived experiences, but I actually was diagnosed already when I got on TikTok, but I did notice when I got on TikTok, I found like a sense of community there. And I heard like a woman, a mom, she was saying how, a lot of adults who are just being diagnosed as autistic are romanticizing autism. And I'm like, just because we're not like your son and we don't have the same experiences as him doesn't mean that we're romanticizing anything. So there's
Mhm.
a lot of people out there who don't seem very happy that a lot of adults are being diagnosed, but I'm like, well, why not? Well, people have the right to know why they're different, and especially as Black women, with us always being like demonized for our behaviors, why can't we learn that we're autistic? I just had a lady comment. I hope Black women. I don't know if you've been on social media, but I posted it. They're like, I hope Black people aren't going to start using this as an excuse to be
I
rude
did
and
see your post
loud
that.
and
And what if we do? And what if we do?
like rude and loud and mean. So I
Mm.
really had to like break it down. And I posted her comment. I didn't even blur her name out. I'm like, let everybody see who you are. But
Yep,
all
air
right.
her out.
I don't want to ramble because I do that sometimes. Um, do you have any recent projects you'd like to share?
Recent projects. Well, I guess my YouTube channel is a recent project, sort of. I've been posting there. That's totally been like a passion, a goal of mine. But I think in working in the online space now, I think I just like have more knowledge under my belt to share there. So my YouTube channel is one. And I guess that's just like one big platform where I will be sharing more of my journey with, being late diagnosed ADHD. I'm entering my 30s soon, and I don't know, just the process of seeking neurodiverse affirming care, like seeking a therapist, how I've gone about assessment, but then also diving into lifestyle with AuDHD and how I make money and support myself and how others can do so too. So I think that's like one big project that I would love to share. Um, and really quick, I would love to jump back to your what you were mentioning about, the late or the diagnosis and hopefully Black people wouldn't use it as an excuse and things like that. I do think there's a lot of conversation around that,
There
around
is.
adults receiving more diagnoses, and is autism being diagnosed way too much? Is the spectrum too large? And I just think we have to remind people that just because more diagnoses are appearing seemingly doesn't mean that the diagnosis criteria is changing. It just means more people
Yeah.
are no longer flying under the radar. And why wouldn't we want more people to be correctly diagnosed so that, society as a whole could be supported in the ways that it needs to be? I think maybe there's projection in some people. I think maybe some people might need a diagnosis. They just were never had the opportunity to receive one. And I think
Yes.
that's also okay to say, but it's never too late to receive a diagnosis
Hmm.
um, because it's hereditary. So
Yeah,
I
and
asked my parents, I said, who wants to get a diagnosis? Who wants to get a test?
A few years ago, there was actually a doctor who was trying to get the diagnosis criteria changed because he was like, diagnoses are just being given out too freely now. And I'm just like, I have a whole post about it. I just haven't put it up. But to me, it just felt like he wanted to say too many Black people are being diagnosed as autistic. But I was like, wow, you're going to change the whole criteria because you think the diagnosis is being given out too freely. This isn't an exclusive white boys only club. But I was just like, okay, I did post about it like when it first happened. This was probably a good 4 years ago, like when, somebody who had like a faceless channel, they sent me the
Of course.
information and they asked me to share it. So I was like, sure, I don't care. If
Yeah.
somebody says something, I'll just block them. But what do you want people to know and take away from this interview?
I would love people to know. I feel like this is probably voiced a lot, but I really just want to remind people that it doesn't have a look. It doesn't have a sound. It really it does have very clear diagnostic criteria. So it's not like anybody can just get diagnosed with autism. But I will say, I think people that you think might not be autistic, it's like I've also gotten now, you don't seem autistic, you don't look autistic. Yeah,
Hmm.
I know that was a survival instinct. It was a tactic. It was conditioned in me. So I just think we have to open our minds up to the idea that a lot more people could be on the spectrum than we think. And even if they're not on the spectrum, even if they are diagnosed with ADHD or any other neurodivergence or mental health condition, I think that we just need to show grace. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that person, but they just might need different accommodations. They might need, everybody's different. I just think we need to keep in mind that everybody's different and we can't support each other in different ways.
Yes. Where can everybody find you?
Everybody can find me at the Samantha JD across socials. So TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all the things.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Samantha, for sharing your powerful story and wisdom with us today. To our listeners, like always, thank you for tuning in to Black Girl Diagnosed. Your presence and support means everything. And until next time, take care and keep advocating with love.